node is that due to Edu being out for another week or week and a half on vacation, and there being some like hiring and onboarding going on with their key dev team, something we need to do in this sprint early on, hopefully, is re-estimate the launch schedule with DAppNode and Giveth, and just also be open to adapting. We need to finish the edit on the smart contract. And the UI and UX needs plugged in once those edits on the contract are completed. We will launch liquidity mining and the claiming web page. Updates around hiring dev on the Giveth side. Our emotional outreach, we're in the midst of interviews. Griff had another, so I haven't heard yet how that went. But I believe there's 3 or 4 candidates that kind of made it past the first step of pre-qualifying. And so we're interviewing those folks. And we've also had 1 or 2 people reach out that are interested in contributing on a freelance basis. So those people are just kind of on pause until we find our full-on Solidity developer and they've been onboarded, and then they can manage, additional part-time freelance contributors. For givebacks, this kind of ties into that whole estimating the launch schedule with DAppNode. At the end of 7, we decided that we don't want to have DAppNode be a blocker, and so we can go ahead and launch the givebacks program before the token launch of DAppNode as well as Giveth. And so we're going to be releasing, Giveth is going to be releasing things monthly or bi-monthly, which I think is really cool. And it also gives our comms team a lot of fresh content and stories to run with. So what do we need to do in order to launch givebacks? And automated. So that's something that Ashley and I are working on. Also, we need to figure out the integration with 3box or IDX. So that's something really clear for the deployment spec to make sure we get that figured out. Our communication circle needs to get all of the messaging ready for a givebacks program launch across, social and Medium and whatever documentation we want to have in the Giveth docs. And from a design perspective, we need to create the badge design and whatever other UI that we decide to have. I think right now it's just the badge, someone to be a verified project. We need to complete all the airdrop blockers and the deployment spec. And I'm just going to take Bowen to create out because it's kind of become like a team thing. Any questions around what I've shared so far pertaining to DAppNode, the Solidity Dev, or Givebacks program?
So for just clarity on the DAppNode priorities, DAppNode in this sprint cycle is going to be launching their liquidity mining.
That's the goal.
Cool. Which means, if they're launching the liquidity mining, doesn't that mean that they're launching the token?
So I think that they're not actually necessarily fully launching liquidity mining in this sprint cycle because Edu is going to be out for another week. So I don't know that that's possible, but I guess more what I meant in this bullet is that anything that isn't tied up around liquidity mining, that's a focus, that's something that they're focusing on in the next 2 weeks, is getting all of that in order on the back end so that they are ready to go for the liquidity mining.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. Yeah. Getting launch ready.
That.
Cool. I'm sharing my screen, by the way, if anyone wants to follow along. You can click watch stream in the Discord.
So I remember last time we were mentioning that if we wanted to start setting the givebacks, we would require at least to have the pre-box verification or some kind of automation of the verification process, right? Even before the
Yeah.
mining of the token.
Yeah, definitely. I know that's a priority for the Dev 2 team right now. Yeah, we really want to make sure that we have some sort of integration there to automate the process before we launch the givebacks. So we don't intend to actually launch the givebacks program within the next 2 weeks. These are just the things that we're focused on closing out and getting organized so that we can estimate when we're ready to launch givebacks, maybe in the next sprint or the sprint after that.
Okay, I have to do some research about that because I got a little bit slow after the next migration, so I need to solve some issues regarding the rich text that we haven't been able to update yet to live. So after that, I think I can, yeah, focus completely on the pivot verification and the flying of the press. That it's like the other way of verification, check or being able to say that a project is not something right or proper for the platform.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect. Yeah, thanks for that update.
Mateo, do you have everything you need for the 3-box integration, mockup wise?
I did one a couple of years ago, but I know that it changed it. And one of the worries that I had is that they are migrating slowly to ceramic, or I don't know the other name of the project. So I want to check if it is still a smart decision to do it to Freebox or set already to the one that is being migrated, that is currently in alpha. So as a mockup, I was only thinking about having a button to send your wallet to the Freebox dashboard where you could be able to set up everything you want, social media, pictures, everything. We uh, in the dashboard we could have like the option to check if they have already made all of that content available in their account. So I think a requirement would be what does actually make an address or a user actually verified to Freebox. Having a picture, having Twitter, or what else. That's like most important because showing their information is not that relevant right now. It's mostly what is actually important to have.
There's, you know, the issue that's in GitHub that has been there for a while about verification, where we were tracking the profile verification.
Yeah, let me check for it. I know
I think
what.
there's the good info in there, and there's answers to that question. There's at least a proposal for that in here, where basically like the requirement here would be for a project to verify either their Twitter, their GitHub, or their email. Those 3 things, like any of those basically, and they could even do more than that. The idea is that we could show a badge kind of for each of those somewhere on, like, yeah, Twitter, GitHub, and or email. So like any one of those that the project had verified, we'd be able to like show somewhere on their profile, probably like icons for each of these, and then if a user hovered over it, they might be able to see a link to the actual Twitter and GitHub and or email that was verified.
So without relying on design mockups, I think that we could list these options in the profiles, in the public profile and the private also, saying you have already been verified with Facebook, with your Twitter account and many others. So we could say you have a level of verification of 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, just like it does also. Do you agree?
Yeah, are you saying we should have UI to show users how verified they are, basically? Is that what I'm hearing?
yeah, after they do the connect to Freebox option.
Yeah, I like that. I do think we might need a little bit more UI for this, but I don't think we have to go too crazy with it. But yeah, something clear just to like make it clear to a user as they're setting this up that they can verify these things, and the more they verify, the better. And like checking them off, I guess, as they verify each piece. And then I see Ashley here had suggested Gitcoin's trust level UI UX. We might be able to do something similar there because they already have like verify with your Twitter.
What about the verification parties that were being handled? Should we add like a toggle in there that someone in here adds to a user, this guy is verified because he attended to a verification party or something like that, and that would also add a bonus point to this.
Yeah, so the way to think about it is that the 3-box verification will be like one of the first steps before you go through the project verification process. And then if you go through the project verification process, then you get the ultimate badge that's like you're eligible for givebacks, right? But yeah, maybe I hear what you're saying. We might be able to make some nice UI UX to kind of tie that all together. So yeah, I think something to add to this to-do list for us is just to get, and Marco, it seems like he's already aware of this because he's been chatting on this, and he even shared the suggestion from Ashley to include trust level. But getting finalized UI UX from Marco on what the process for a user should look like of actually verifying. And it I guess, yeah, part of that is kind of a chicken and the egg because it'd be helpful to know from Mateo which tool we want to use. That would probably help Marco do this UI UX.
Perfect. Yeah, that issue is kind of old, so I'll start again the research having in mind what Kai suggested. Yeah, after that, I think maybe this spring or half of the other will be done.
Awesome.
Awesome. So I can follow up with Marco on that. Okay. Any other questions around givebacks? I'll dig into the project verification, which we've already kind of started talking about. But yeah, our verification parties are underway. Ashley and I are getting all the different email templates migrated over to AirDrop so we can automate that process. So that's something that we're sending out in a different way than we've done in the last 2 rounds for this next round. And we're trying a different process also of the way that we're inviting people, like each of us taking a couple projects and like following them through the whole journey rather than having one person sending the emails and one person, like reviewing. So it's been cool. Like we've kind of changed the process a little bit each round and just getting more and more streamlined. And that is all for project verification. So then the other piece is the airdrop. We talked with Bowen a little bit last night about some of the edge cases that he's experiencing and working through those. That master compilation spreadsheet that I believe he and Hannah are working on. Hannah, since you're on, maybe you're able to provide us with, stream has ended, but the participant is still here. Okay. Hannah, maybe you're able to provide us with the latest update of how it's going migrating all the different airdrop spreadsheets and tabs together into one place.
Yeah, so basically I went and I added up in the our Give token distribution, or let's see, in the basically the token file, I added everything up, and Bowen was looking at the data, and it looked like there might have been some, yeah, so if you go to the final totals tab, so basically I added up each Ethereum address and kept, put the names there for names that we had, and some names were like notes, and I just figured I'd keep those in because we can always take them out. But there's some blank names that have very large amounts, and so that made Bowen a little like hesitant on that, and I know he was going to check in with, I think, Griff. I think he was going to check in with you and see if that looked reasonable.
Yeah, Griff and Bowen talked about it a little bit last night, and I think Griff was confirming those folks, and there was like some Bitcoin transfers and whatnot, right, Griff? So those,
Yeah.
were you gonna review those couple blank ones and just make sure it was legit?
Yeah. I'm actually, what are those blank names with 23 million or no, 23,000? Okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the most for someone who's blank is 23,000. And yeah, I just added up the total airdrop amount and Ethereum address for Giveth Trace users, past contributors, current contributors, and donors tabs. And it comes out to, yeah, just under 15 million. And we're still missing, the only missing people and Ethereum addresses are those that are in the missing ETH addresses doc, and we're still kind of tracking down.
Cool. Yeah, and we don't need all of the final addresses to do this because we will have kind of admin powers and we can change people's addresses if they don't claim. So
Oh, okay, perfect.
what's more important is that we don't get the wrong address for someone different, or something, and mix up the addresses. That's the failure method we have to be careful of.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And I added in because I think it was the past contributors sheet maybe, but I added in all of the not unconfirmed ETH addresses that were there if we had values for those and not a new confirmed address. So the only ones that we don't have are where we had names and an airdrop amount, but no address at all. And those are still in that file, so.
And those are fine. We can just assign like 0x1, 0x2, 0x3, 0x4, 0x5 for all those, and then change it later.
Oh, okay, cool. Then I can add those in, and then that'll have all the data.
There's 0x Gitcoin, right? That would be fine because we'll put that in. I mean, we'll ask Edu for the final thing exactly how he would like us to do that, but we will. I'm pretty sure they'll end up with placeholders for them, and we will still do the airdrop. But then, in that way, we'll just have a master list of like, oh yeah, these are the ones that are likely to change.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. Then I'll add in those missing ETH addresses, and then we'll get and those amounts with just a placeholder or something, and then all the data will be there, and it's good to go.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Hannah.
Awesome. So yeah, while that's going on, our communications team will meet this Friday again as our next comm circle, and we can talk about what communications messaging is needed around when we release the airdrop, and draft and edit that messaging and just have it ready and queued up so that when we estimate the launch date for airdrop, once we've got everything final complete on the back end, then we can pre-schedule those posts and those autopilot emails and blogs and all that jazz. So that's something that we'll be talking about in comms for airdrop stuff, as well as for the givebacks program on Friday. Are there any? So those are our Sprint 8 priorities. The other thing is it was one of the sub tabs that we talked about here is the deployment spec, which Griff and I and Ashley hacked on a bit last night. If there aren't any questions, I'll just leave a moment right now if anyone has any other questions or things they'd like to discuss around Sprint 8 priorities, or if there's anything that we didn't cover that you feel strongly like we should also prioritize over the next 2 weeks. Let me know. So with that, we have a little under 30 minutes left of time on this call before the Dev 2 call starts. I think what would be great, thanks for sharing that in the Discord, is to just take a look at this deployment spec. Whoever, definitely it would be great to have your eyes on it, Willie. And then Griff and I think we left off the last at the very bottom was, I think, Griff, you were looking at the project staking or the governance DAO, the project staking, and then we didn't really get to the quadratic funding or the big future dreams section. So I would recommend using the next 30 minutes kind of as like a hack session. Griff, if you want to go down to the post-launch fast follow, like where we left off last night, and then Willie and maybe Mateo, like whoever else on the call has some knowledge around these things and would like to take a look and just kind of review it. And the intention in reviewing is, have we answered all the questions that a developer might have when needing to create this stuff and implement, like creating these contracts? Have we answered all the questions? Is it clear? Are we thorough enough? Is this the latest and greatest based on like the adjustments and adaptations we've made over the past few weeks and months? This will be like the big, thorough, like meat and potatoes kind of document that we send to someone like Edu. And if you don't see this, if you go to Notion and you just click on Give Token, and then scroll down under the development section, you'll find this document. It has an emoji of like an astronaut and it says spec deployment.
Cool.
Yeah, and also, of course, as a big part of this process is just for our own, like putting it all together and be like, oh wait, because these two things we need to do this, and having it all just kind of summarized kind of helps bring up some things like, and don't be afraid if you're like, oh wait, we need this, to put it in there and we can clean it up at the end.
So true. Whenever I do these specs and go through the mockups, I always think about all the little things that we missed out, all those little details. So it's great for that. And it's better to think about it now and bring it up now than when we're halfway through development.
Yeah, and if it goes in there, it's okay. It's like, oh, like the dev doesn't care about this, but well, we do, and I don't want to lose my thought, so I'm just gonna write it down. It's fine.
Cool.
Like I was going through the spec, I'm like, oh, we need to add something to our DAO for this to happen. Okay,
Did you think? I was just wondering that. Is this what we would deliver to Edu, or will we deliver to Edu?
I think it was. I think it's. I think the end goal is what we deliver to Edu, and just like a syncing place for everyone, kind of the shelling point. It's like our internal white paper, you could say. It doesn't have to be. It's never intended to go external.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. So, Forrest, were you saying you want to run through the top part of the spec, or just skip down to the posts?
We could read through it together, but I kind of thought maybe it would be most efficient. I know sometimes if someone else is reading something, I'm not focused or understanding it as much. So I was just thinking like we could maybe each pull up this document and read it on our own and like collaboratively review it and make adjustments. I was suggesting that Griff skip down to the fast follow section where we left off last night. And then, Willie and others who are joining the call now and looking at this for the first time to start from the top.
Cool. That sounds good.
Does that work for you guys, or would you rather we kind of go line by line?
I like the breakup and hack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, for this CV DAO section, is there yet a template glyph for like the Gardens DAO that just has all the variables that we need to figure out, that we need to customize? I see your lips moving, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, there's a whole garden swarm right now. So yes, there is, but it's changing a little bit. And also, I think this post launch fast follow can stay high level because like we don't want to get too distracted by it. But I do have a whole garden swarm team working on this. Paulo and Fabi and Gabby are working on Garden Swarm. So, and they have funding there. Well, I think they have some funding from One Hive, and it's like they're going to use someone else as the first like user, some other friends of mine, and that's like going to be their guinea pig for making it easy to bring in an outside org and launch. And so we'll probably, unless we are really fast, we'll just be like number 2 or number 3 for them. So yeah, it'll be easy. But that's in the works. And also with the token engineering commons, we'll have a lot of this. We'll have almost all of the same. So we'll have a nice template to use for our own community.
Sweet. So awesome.
Another thing is that I don't think we ever really had discussions about like percent claimable investing. We just kind of said something and went with it. But eventually that will need to be like discussed about and thought about pros and cons. Should it be 6 years? Should it be 2 years? 13% or 10 or 8? You know, we should at least just have a discussion about it.
The percent claimable on day 1 and then the unlock period, or is the unlock period? I guess both of those are still up for discussion.
Yeah, I think that we should first have the liquidity mining a little bit better scoped out because the percent claimable, all that stuff kind of comes in with the liquidity mining. So I want to say it's still, I just don't want to, like it's sitting there with numbers right now, but we should probably like accept that it's still like soft.
Yeah, that's a good point. And just thinking through it, there's things we got to think through. Like when you mentioned liquidity mining, I'm thinking about, okay, if we airdrop 15 million tokens and only 13% is claimable, and that's like 1.8 million tokens, right? And we had these different liquidity mining programs on different chains, and if all of that were to get locked up, and the token price is 10 cents, that's not a lot of liquidity, right? That's tens of thousands of dollars of liquidity in each liquidity pool if 100% of it gets deposited. So we might need, you're right, we might need to make more of it. We need to consider that, and it could make sense to make more of it claimable so that we have sufficient liquidity in these pools.
I mean, the demand. What's interesting is, regardless of the price, you can figure out what the APR will be if like 50% will be in there, or because the price kind of cancels out. So depending on our percent claimable and how we do the liquidity mining, we can create it as an expected APR.
Totally. Do you have spreadsheets for that? I have a spreadsheet that I put together for calculating APR based on the amount of tokens rewarded, and then you can assume how much liquidity. You can assume a price. You can assume how much liquidity is locked up, and then calculate APR and other things like market cap and stuff from that.
Edu has a ridiculous spreadsheet for this, with the vesting.
Yeah.
Where the vesting is happening, and what the APRs would be, or you can just be like, okay, let's assume 50% of all GIV tokens are in liquidity mining.
Super cool to see. Can you share that? Do you have that handy?
Yeah.
Cool. I can try and hack on that a little bit too. We can make a Giveth one and start filling it in.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was in wow, let's see what DAppNode does, because a lot of things are changing always in crypto, unfortunately. For instance, Uniswap v3 and Balancer v2. That has happened since we were planning on doing this, which is really creating a lot of innovation in the liquidity mining space. So we'll see exactly how we adapt and how DAppNode adapts.
Yes, I totally agree. We got to keep an eye on this Uniswap v3 stuff, and I haven't seen an example of a great liquidity mining program on Uniswap v3 yet. But it's definitely, in terms of that liquidity question we were talking about earlier, it could make a lot of sense for us to incentivize liquidity on v3 instead of v2 if we can figure out a good way to make it a good experience.
Yeah. Or maybe we just have to use SushiSwap, or maybe we use Uniswap v2. A lot of these questions, there's just too many questions for diving into details. And this is the benefit of having DAppNode do it first, and then because they might change things, and we are kind of beholden to their choices because we can't really change the contracts.
You're doing liquidity mining on mainnet?
Yeah, we'll do mainnet and XDAI.
And XDAI, you're going to use HoneySwap?
Yeah, I think we should, since we're going to be teamed up with OneHive so much.
Yeah. Looks like they're launching on the 19th, the GIV platform.
Oh, nice.
I saw that. They've got single asset staking already up, but I don't think it's generating rewards.
And they have a new farms that should come out of the bench.
But doesn't SushiSwap have tons of cross-chain stuff now?
Yeah.
They're getting way bigger than Uniswap in terms of cross-chain functionality.
Oh, I haven't seen SushiSwap's new cross-chain stuff.
They're on Avalanche, they're on XDAI, they're on whatever the hell you want.
Good for them. Then maybe we should check them out. And
I personally feel really de-incentivized to do anything on Uniswap when gas is consistently over 200.
True.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still, at the same time, there's benefits of having some liquidity available on mainnet, because some people are disincentivized, but some people,
the high rollers.
Yes, it's clearly some people are willing to pay that price.
Yeah, and if we don't have it on mainnet, then there'll be issues.
What would be the disadvantages of using a SushiSwap LP tokens?
None?
I don't think there's any big disadvantages of using SushiSwap versus UniV2. There is, I've noticed have you guys noticed this? It's always interesting when I'm like to see which protocol a project chooses. I feel like the anonymous projects and stuff tend to go more SushiSwap, and more of like the projects that fall more on the VC funded or like, I don't know, centralized with an actual corporate entity tend to go more Uniswap. And I feel like it speaks a little bit towards their ethos. Maybe that could just be me.
Yeah, and also the Ethereum aligned groups choose Uniswap. It's definitely political. These are political choices.
Right. I love SushiSwap personally, and I love Uniswap, so I like them both. But yeah, so SushiSwap is obviously very similar to Uniswap v2. But this new v3, if we can figure out a way to do liquidity mining in a way that makes sense, it is a lot more capital efficient, and we'll be able to get much lower slippage with much lower liquidity, which is pretty cool. But there's tricks to it, right? Like, really, I don't think it necessarily makes sense for us to do it unless I want to see how these vaults evolve. These like managed vaults where you can deposit your liquidity and they'll manage your position for you. Because most users right now are not ready for V3, and it requires a lot more active management. You got to make sure you're providing to the right range, and if the price goes out of the range you're providing liquidity to, you're no longer getting the fees. And if it goes out of the range, you end up with 100% of either Give or ETH or whichever pair you're staking. Whereas I think users right now are pretty used to maintaining 50-50 of each token. So we just got to, I don't know if we want to be one of the first projects to do liquidity mining on V3, and unless we can figure out how to solve those challenges, then I'm not sure if V3 makes sense.
How savvy do we expect people?
That's a good question. I think, people are going to be, if you're going to be liquidity mining, they're definitely going to have some level of savviness. But at the same time, too, we should try and make it so that you don't need to be savvy, right? Like, try and make it very possible.
Mélène, je t'entends ta voix.
What about BAL V2? Are there any other impacts on the user experience for using Balancer V2 versus V1? Or is it pretty much the same? The magic happens on the back end.
I think the magic happens on the back end, but they launched the UI on Monday or something. So it's hard, it's like, this is why I'm like, man, these liquidity mining questions, I think we should just hunt for a month and see what happens.
I love that idea. See how other projects handle it. And yeah, I'm hopeful that there's going to be some really cool vaults that pop up that will manage your Uni V3 LP position, so you don't have to. So it feels just as easy as V2.
Yeah, and Balancer has similar options. So it's
So are there any big unknown? I do think the post-launch fast follow stuff, I'm tempted to hunt on that a little bit more too, unless there's anything that impacts the deployment, and just focus on making sure we have all our ducks in the row for the deployment. Are there any? And you mentioned, so one big unknown that we should, I think you're right, we should be more thoughtful about is just the global lockup params, and I think it'd be good to model out what the yield farming stuff would look like if we were to use Uniswap V2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a good next step that we can take from this, I think. Are there any other big, as you guys went through this deployment spec, were there any other big unknowns that you stumbled across that you realized we really need to answer sooner rather than later? Did you hear that question, Griff?
Yeah, but I don't. Any unknowns I have, I'll just stick in the doc. I don't have any unknowns.
Okay, cool.
Like, I actually think we're very well prepared.
The bridge is all that stuff. The bridge between XDAI and Ethereum is up. Figured out.
Yeah, I think the only issue there is it'll enforce us to choose a specific token, like whether it's 667, ERC 667, ERC 20 on XDAI. It won't really matter, but it's like a research thing, and then it works. But tokens are being moved across, so it's not a big deal.
Are you talking about XPollinate?
I'm talking about bridging XDAI tokens to mainnet.
Oh, the Giveth token.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you need this for the deployment spec? We say our GiveDAO and project curation contracts should be able to add addresses. Is that relevant for this deployment? The project curation contracts? Or will it just be our GiveDAO?
And project curation. Yeah, I don't even know what project curation contracts are.
I think it's the staking, project staking.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah, that's just old. Yeah, delete.
But casually, I have that in my screen on the Giveth 2 app. So the curation of the project is basically the flagging of it. So I was having this question regarding a suggestion that Learning made about Kleros curation list. So I was wondering if Celeste in XDAI has some kind of functionality like that, which are you make a curated list of projects, and if you flag one, you get out of the list, or how that works in Celeste or in XDAI, or maybe I'm understanding wrong.
You're a little muffled. I couldn't really understand what you're saying.
Oh man, that's been happening for a week.
I think if you look at the camera, it sounds better.
Okay, I will do. Better?
Yeah.
Okay, must be the mic. No, I was saying that flagging process in the dApp, I had a suggestion from Merlin to use Kleros curation lists. So I was wondering if Celeste in XDAI has some kind of feature like that we could implement right now, because that kind of goes alongside with the user verification through Treebox. So the project will also be curated through flagging or not. So I'm not sure how that works. So I wanted to know your opinion, guys, on that.
Man, I still don't understand what the context is. The plugin for what? Is the question, Mateo? Is it if Celeste has the same kind of like curation list functionality that Kleros offers?
Exactly. Or how should we use it? Because I don't really understand how does that work.
And for what's the use case? What do we need to curate?
Flagging projects, the projects on Giveth 2.
The project, the verified project.
So if there's if someone sees a bad project that
and they go and flag it.
Celeste could like if someone we could move to Celeste for like taking projects out of the verification, like they've been verified and now they're like being flagged for being not verified, and we could create a Celeste system for that. Because what Celeste does, they're just like an arbitrator, right? They're an external arbitrator. So if we would just say, okay, this is to become a verified project, you have to agree to these terms. If you break these terms, then you can be kicked out of the verified project. You can be you can be kicked out of the club, right? And if they wanted to challenge that, and have a dispute with, we could use OneHive as an external arbitrator.
Cool. Yeah, I love using lists for that. And I think the idea of like a list of projects is also interesting too, Mateo. Like, I don't know if it's a requirement for this deployment spec, but it's definitely a cool thing to think about, especially if we get demand for it. Like if people just want, I have seen requests from people who, especially during hackathons and stuff, they just want a list of like projects that are charitable that they to donate to. So just having that list of open sourcing the list that we have of these like verified projects could be a cool feature down the road.
Definitely. Also, we'll probably need to whitelist tokens. This is something that came up with Balancer when they did their liquidity mining scheme. People would create a token that has liquidity on some exchange and a price on Uniswap, but is a total fake ass token just to like get it, So we should only give givebacks to tokens that are actual tokens, not something that some millionaire spun up, created liquidity for, and now it has a price, and now they get givebacks for donating to projects with this token that has no real value.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Do you think, is there a way that we can automate that? Like only tokens with a market cap above X, or only tokens that have X liquidity on like multiple exchanges or something?
I think I think it should be, at least the way Balancer did it, it was manual, because like Uniswap liquidity is valid, and if you have a bunch of money, you can make it have a price, even though no one is trading on it. No one cares. And even if you wanted people to trade on it, then you could start making bots. In the end, it's really like a human choice. Like, is this a token or not? Like,
Cool.
Is this...
Oh, you know what you made me think that maybe we could use, the token list, Uniswap's open source library of like token lists.
Or Claros token list. Claros has one.
Claros has one too. Cool. Yeah, there is some curation, and we can choose. You can choose how. There's like the CoinGecko list, which has like over 4,000 tokens, but there's also a Zapper list that has less, and they have their own process of like verifying each of the tokens that get added to that list. So we might be able to use that. But yeah, let's add that as a requirement. Admins must have the ability to whitelist specific tokens. All right, We got 1 minute left. Here was one question I had was, we have this token transfers may need to be able to be paused for the Give token. Is that still an open question, like whether or not we'll need that capability, or do we know that we want that capability?
I think it's easier just to choose a token that has it. It's a very common functionality, so it's easier just to choose a token that has that, and then if we don't need it, then we set the admin that can do that to 0x0, and it goes away, right? So, but if we don't want to, so I really think strategically it's important that we let DAppNode blaze the trail on liquidity mining. So if we are ready to launch a token and we want to do givebacks, and we want to get people to start using this and start understanding what we're doing, we can start without the liquidity mining and without transferability of the token. We could do the airdrop, claimable, we can do the whole 9 yards, but we just don't let transfers happen.
Totally. I think you sold me on that. I think that makes sense. Cool. I gotta run. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See you soon.
See you guys.